Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Jane and my husband Mike does everything behind the camera. We're British early retirees, we have no debt, we've paid off the mortgage and we live a thrifty, frugal and money-saving life here in Brittany in northwest France. And every Wednesday we invite you in for a midweek money chat. Often we have big topics to talk about in our midweek money chat. And today we're talking about the domestic, the small, the little things that we do all the time to save money. So this week we're going to share with you 15 things that we don't throw away and how they save us money. Let's get into the video. I'm flying solo this week because Mike's working really hard with another guy in the house on work that's just got to get done. And I'm in the less pleasant surroundings of my sewing room. Nonetheless, let's get on with the things that we don't throw away to save money. Now, I don't know about you, but even if we pay good money for pillows, and we do tend to buy our pillows from IKEA, they last couple of years at best and they just lose all of their substance. They just don't work very well. And there's two things that I do with pillows. I don't throw them away. I wash them monthly, I dry them out obviously, but there's two things that I do. The first thing I do is I amalgamate two pillows into one. If you take the cover off the fluff in the middle, it's usually a nylon fibre, isn't it? If you take that off, you've got like the remnants of a pillow. And what I do is I take the other cover off the other pillow and I put the two together, and then I'll put one of the pillowcases back around it and sew it up. So I make two not so good pillows into one good one. The other thing that I do to make sure I don't throw them away to get as long a life as I can out of them is I've got the oblong pillow, I unstitch one end of it, I get the fibre inside and I literally flip it over on itself to create a pillow half the length, and then I'll tuck the outside case inside it and then use my sewing machine to sew along it. And instead of having an oblong pillow, I've got a square pillow, and I use that to make cushions to go on our sofas. Or if I make cushions for charities or for donations, I'll use that to put inside the cushions. And like I said, don't forget, the pillows themselves have been washed and dried, so they last, but they don't last forever, do they? The next one that we tend to keep, I find them to be really useful, is the bag inside the cereal box. I find them to be really durable. They're great in my sewing rooms. I give them a good clean out. And I use them for storing my bits of quilt. So if I've got bits of quilt that are half in progress, they're really good for that. Another good thing with those cereal bags is to use them in packaging. So if I want to post something, I want to make sure it's waterproof, I'll use that as the bag to go inside. Another thing is our coffee comes in, it looks like a brick. It just looks like a brick of coffee. It's difficult to explain it to you. But those coffee bags are super durable. And once you kind of make a hole in the top, the whole coffee bag just poofs up, doesn't it? It loses its vacuum. And those coffee bags are absolutely super. They're not very big, but they make really good pots for the garden. So I kind of fold over the top twice. I'll put compost in it. And if I'm growing on little tomato plants or cucumber plants or anything like that, I will use those as pots to grow on my plants. Or if I've taken cuttings from other bushes or other plants in the garden, I will use those as pots to grow my plants on, therefore saving me money because I don't need to go and buy or add to the plastic in the world. I don't need to go and buy any more plastic pots. Those little coffee bags, I don't know if you get them in other countries. I'll try and get Mike to put in a picture here of what ours look like. I'll photograph them for you. But they're super durable. And like I said, the cereal bags, really good bags to use again, and the little coffee bags, super things for making plant pots out of. next thing that I don't throw away just ever is coffee grounds. Now, most people think of coffee grounds as putting them straight into the compost bin, but I don't do that. I just stick them straight onto the garden. I think they fix nitrogens into the soil, but they are really, really good in my garden. Our coffee doesn't come in a plastic pod. It comes in a compostable bag. Nonetheless, I put the bags in the compost, but I actually rip the little coffee bags open. And when I've got sort of a pot full enough to put out in the garden, rain, shine, winter, summer, whatever the season, I just sort of sprinkle them around my raised beds. I put them around the shrubs, the trees, the bushes. It's just free compost. Not just free compost, it's a good free fertilizer. And I spread it around the garden. The next one that I do not throw away is any card or cardboard, the cereal boxes or any gift cards, any calendars that we get given. Because as a crafter, I find it really, really useful. I make my own binding to go around the quilts. That's 2.5-inch strips folded over. I keep all my 2.5-inch strips until I've got enough to make a whole scrappy binding for the whole quilt, fold them in half, and then I fold them around the card. And here's an example of what I do here. As I've got my card, I've cut a section down and folded it over, and then I wind my strips around it. And that's something that I do that's really, really useful. I also use old calendars or any card that we get for templates in crafting as well. Really, really very, very handy. And we don't get much junk mail, but if we do get anything like that at all, any advertising, things that I've signed up for that I forgot that I don't want to come in the post, I use that for any English paper piecing as my templates for my quilting. So any bits of card, any bits of paper, they all come in handy, and I don't have to buy any because I get it for free. Next one is toothbrushes. I mean, we get through a toothbrush a month. Because you just do. You just need them, don't you? But I keep them. They are so handy. All around our window frames, because we've got our sort of sealed window frames. They've got all the ridges and gullies and gutters. I use them for that, for scrubbing those out. I use them for scrubbing around taps and anything in the oven or around the bathroom, the seals. You know, when you pull the drawer out of the washing machine and you've got to scrub the top of it. Old toothbrushes are really, really handy. And they do get a battering, don't they, when we've scrubbed them around our teeth and then when we use them in the house for cleaning. So I don't throw away old toothbrushes. I use those as little cleaning tools, and very handy they are too. I use quite a lot of aluminium foil and aluminium foil trays, and I've worked out I can use each one at least 3 times, maybe less if they've been in the oven. So I have the aluminium foil trays that I like to use in my freezer. I've only got 2 small freezers, and the trays mean I don't have to spend too much money buying these. And then I can use them again and again. They're good to scrub out and get them used again. And then I use the foil to put over the top of them if I'm reheating something. So if I can then take that foil off, if it's not mucky and I can just wash it off, anything else that needs to get wrapped up, I can use that 3 times. And because that's a really valuable thing to recycle here, what I do with the foil when I've used it 3 times or maybe more is I scrunch it into a ball. The next one gets put into a ball. The foil tray that I've used 3 or 4 times gets wrapped around it. So I've got a nice big ball of aluminium, and I can send that off for recycling. But I always make sure I get at least 3 uses out of it, and I certainly never use it once and throw it away. The next one made me chuckle because it made me think of Willy Wonka's everlasting gobstopper that you could just keep sucking and sucking and sucking on. And I have kind of like everlasting soap. Everlasting soap. It's a funny one, isn't it? When the bar of soap gets too small and it's a bit awkward, isn't it? It's almost like a slither of it. I just get the next bar of soap and I kind of wet the two together and give them a good squish together, so I don't throw out those last little bits of soap. I remember back in the day when we had the proper wooden furniture that my mum used to keep the soap, and when it was dry, she would take the drawer runners out and then she would rub the soap up and down the drawer runners so they would slide in and out easily. And another thing that my mum used to do as well is the little bits of soap that she would keep to use. I suppose she would often use them to make like homemade laundry powder from it. But in the meantime, all the little bits of soap went in a bag and into a drawer and got used to make the place smell nice. But I never have old soap because, like I said, I get the new bar of soap and the old bar of soap. I wet the two of them, squidge them together, and we have Franken soap. We have the everlasting soap, the soap that never runs out because it always just gets put on the last one. And I don't care what kind of soap it is. I'm really, really into olive oil soap at the moment, and they squidge together really, really well. If you've watched plenty of our videos, you know that I am a batch cooker, I am a batch baker. If I get packs of meat, I split them down and I freeze them. And as much as I try to reuse bags I've already got, inevitably I do have to buy some plastic bags. And I just wash them and use them again. I draw the line if it's a smelly fish or a greasy thing or I can't get it clean. But just like my foil, I always try and get at least 3 uses out of them. And I use plastic bags as a crafter as well. Whenever I need to cut, sometimes when you've got a quilt, you can cut, 250 blue half square triangles and then 250 white half square triangles, and you need something to clip it in and keep it in, and I've always got plastic bags for that. And I like to reuse my Ziploc bags in my crafting and in my sewing, but I do not buy a plastic bag and use it once. Again, like I said, I always try and get at least 3 uses out of it. And if it's something like bread or sandwiches or cake, I just carry on using them again and again and again. Like I said, I draw the line if it's meat or it's fish, because it's quite difficult to get that kind of greasy residue out of the bag. I'll tell you another funny story about this. Back in the day of twin tub washing machines, my mum used to do with hot wash to begin with, and in between the hot wash and the next wash, she used to do all her plastic bags, and you could see all her plastic bags pinned to the line. I pinned mine up in the kitchen over the fire to dry, but like I said, I always get at least 3 uses out of them, and no, I don't just throw them away. The next one, as a quilter, I like to keep all of my scrap fabric. I've got bags of it in 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3.5 inches, 5-inch strips, and I keep all of those, and I keep squares as well. But then there's the little off-cut scrappy little bits, and what I do with those is I'll stuff them in a Ziploc bag until I've got enough of them, and then because I've got a rather playful and sometimes destructive 4-year-old little dog who does like to take her toys apart, I then use those old tiny little bits of fabric that are left over for restuffing the dog's toys and then sew the dog's toys up again. I really, really don't like to see fabric going to waste. It concerns me. There's so much fabric out there in the world that if I can do what I can do to not waste it, I make sure I don't do that. And especially if I've bought it or somebody's kindly given it to me, I like to use every little last bit, and it saves me the money of buying any teddy bear stuffing when I go to fix the dog's toys. The next one is glass jars. I can't remember when I've ever bought glass jars. I just keep them whenever I buy a jar of pasta sauce. That jar will get used again. When I've grown tomatoes at home, I've canned using those jars again, using those lids again. I promise you, if the lid is not damaged. Now, some people get hold of the jar and tap it on a work surface to open it up to release the vacuum. Obviously, if I had done that and the lid was damaged in any way, then I wouldn't trust the seal. But if I haven't damaged it in any way and the rubber inside it is perfectly okay, I use those again. But I don't just use it for home canning as well. I store things in it. I store buttons in it, pins in it. We use them as vases. We put nuts, bolts, screws in them. They're great in Mike's workshop space, really good in there. We've got rice in them, cookies in them, flour in them, beans in them, all being used again in those jam jars. If I only use half a jar of pasta sauce, the rest of the jar just goes straight in the freezer. So once I started doing that, I realised, so if I've got any chicken stock or anything I want to freeze, I just freeze it in the jars. I make sure I leave a good headspace for expansion, and they have been absolutely fine. I've never ever had a jar crack. I reheat things in those jars as well. So anything, I used to go to work with soup in a jam jar and put the jam jar with the soup straight into the microwave. Don't forget, in an industrial environment, the contents of those jam jars would have been boiled and boiled and boiled and steamed and boiled at really high temperatures. They're absolutely fine. So it's very, very rare, unless it's broken or I just haven't got a lid and I can't buy a lid, that I ever need to buy any jam jars, and I definitely don't throw them away because I can always find a use for them. This will probably resonate with a lot of you. Do you have gift bags that you use over and over and over again? And every time that somebody gives you a gift bag, you just use that one over and over again. As a family, we've been exchanging gift bags for years and years and years. The other one is wrapping paper. We've got a habit as a family and we do not use any sticky tape. And I don't put any sticky tape on any gifts I give either. And I just fold up the paper around it and I use a nice piece of string and wrap it around it. And then let people know you can use that again. You can, cover books with it if you want to, or just use it again as wrapping paper. I never even put a double knot on the string either, so they can just use the string again. And it's something as a habit, as a family, so people give that to me, and I just use that wrapping paper, gift paper, again. Who buys wrapping paper? Just use it again and again. When I get meat or fish from the supermarket, it usually comes in a plastic tray with a thin film on top of it. And I find that I can use those trays that the meat comes in over and over again. So, for example, I use them seed trays for starting flower seeds or little plant seeds. And I save them up as well to give to people to use as seed trays as well. The other one is that I can put the pots, like the coffee pots and things that I've collected, into them. So I don't have the coffee pots just sitting on my windowsills when they're growing in the spring. And I've got like a tray to keep them in as well. They're very, very handy as seed trays. Let's talk about old clothes. I get quite a lot of clothes secondhand and then I keep them for years and years, or any clothes I buy, I wear them forever and a day. And in the end, they're not usually fit to hand on to anyone else. I've got this hierarchy of clothes. Clothes I would be seen in the street, right down to clothes that I would wear in the garden, and then clothes that I would wear if I was painting the house. And once we've got to the point of that, they've gone to the point of that you wouldn't paint the house with them, then we start to think about what they can use them for. If you have little dogs like I have, and you take the sleeves off a jumper or the body off a jumper, I tend to make little dogs jackets or dogs clothes with them. Another thing that I can do if the sleeves aren't too good but the body's okay, I will use the body of a jumper to make a pillowcase, a small cushion cover to go onto the dog's bed. Our dogs are really handy for recycling. If clothes are okay, but maybe the sleeves worn out a bit on a shirt, then what I will do with that obviously is I'll cut that up for quilting. If it's things like pajamas, they kind of wear almost out, don't they? Then it all becomes a worst case scenario. I clean the windows, they become cleaning cloths, they go into the cleaning basket. Let's go on to food scraps. We don't have a lot of food scraps in our house. Bones tend to go in the fire. I then can use the ash from the wood ash, with the bone ash that's in there as well. That gets used into the garden. Just sprinkle it around the lawn, sprinkle it around trees, put it around fruit trees. That all gets used again. But any food scraps, we compost here. So anything like potato peelings, anything like that gets composted. Citrus peelings, I put into white vinegar. I have cleaning vinegar that's about 12% acidity. I pop, at this time of year, we'll have clementines and satsumas. I'll put the peel into the vinegar, and I use that when I'm cleaning around the place. And some food scraps I just dig straight into the garden, especially if you're growing runner beans or beans in any sort. We make a bean trench and we just put food waste, vegetable scraps, bits of cabbage straight into the bottom. Lastly, the thing that I do not throw away are egg cartons. Egg cartons are a really good brown material to put into my compost. We as gardeners can always get green material to put into the compost, but we desperately need brown material. That will be things like dry leaves or paper or straw from animal bedding. But I don't have much of that, so it's really valuable for me to have those egg cartons. I rip them all up into little pieces and I get them into my compost. Really, really helpful, because like I said, it's easy to get the green material, it's not easy to get the brown material. None of us like throwing stuff away, do we? We thrifty, frugal and money-saving people. We like to make sure everything gets used again and again and again. We don't like to waste things, do we? And the other good thing about using the same things over and over again is you don't have to buy any more of them. Let me know, because I read all of your comments. We love to hear from you. What things do you save and use over and over again that save you money? Thanks for watching, thanks for hitting the thumbs up button, and we will see you on the next video. Bye for now.